And so I wonder how many people in the church or just in society in general who are trying to do all the right things but are ignoring that thing that's inside them. um, because whether if you're in the church, you might hear the verses, the heart is wicked beyond all things, who can know it, and you're like, well, I want to do stand-up comedy, that must be a selfish thing. So I'm just gonna ignore that. Or I really enjoy watching YouTube videos, I want to do it, but it's too self-promoting, so I'm not gonna do that. So I think new school church, after this, like, maybe mini reformation that's happening because of this audio video revolution, is I think people, Christians, exploring their passions and being in these networks or communities that they're just in because they enjoy it.
Hey friends, welcome to the Word Made Digital podcast on YouTube. I'm the host, Joanna LaFleur, and this is season 8 of the podcast. Thanks for joining, for catching these episodes. We're leaning into hope and positivity for the future because it's been a rough couple of years. So enjoy this episode of the podcast. And hey, if you want to check out 7 seasons of archives of the podcast, as well as tutorials, practical help for you in church communications, creative, websites, social media, we got it all here on the YouTube channel. So subscribe now and enjoy this episode. Tyler Wells, welcome to Word Made Digital.
Yes, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Digitally.
I feel like, it's about time. I feel like, we just live down the street from each other, but we're doing this over video conference. It's about time I have you on the podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. Pandemic times, I think sometimes it's just easier. We live down the street, but just let's do Zoom. We're
That's
used
it.
to it.
Well, then neither of us had to, dress presentably.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go too far, can you give us a little introduction, or like give us some context, your current context, and then at some point I'll want to get a bit of history on
Sure.
you. Maybe we'll do that next.
Yeah. I just recently did an identity statement for myself, so let's see if I remember it correctly.
Yes.
But I've started thinking of myself as a holistic business thinker, and I manage YouTubers or creators. So what I really want to do is help them rest in their identity, think through their strategies, and move forward in their specific tactics so that they're personally healthy, professionally confident, and tangibly hitting their goals. Or did I say that? Yes, that's right. So
say that again. Personally confident. You want what you're trying to achieve for them is confidence.
I want them personally healthy, professionally confident,
healthy, right,
and tangibly hitting their goals. And what I found working in the YouTuber creator space, managing, I manage Matty Hapoy. He's got over 1 million subscribers. And him and I together have started, mentoring is the best word that we've found to describe what we do. A handful of other YouTubers who might be really talented on the creative side of things, but are lacking in the business foundations or business skill or some of the low-hanging to medium-hanging fruit around monetization. So we help them build out, a bit of a business plan, a business model for their particular niche within their following, and help them along that. And I think one of the big things that I've come to realize working in this space for a few years now is YouTube and the social media space has a big negative association with it from the outside. So you think of a YouTuber, you think of an influencer as kind of the older language for it, and you just think of these people who think they're better than everyone else. And there's some videos on the internet that kind of prove that. But what I found is a lot of these creators are really try to help within their niche. And they feel that they have either a unique take or they've gone so far and are quote unquote an expert in their particular thing, and they just want to share what they know. And with authenticity being like the buzzword that's around a lot of these creators and what they should be striving for, I think that they should be the best creators are authentically trying to help people. And I think, the other creators who might be more self-absorbed give a bad rap. But I would say, 90% of the YouTubers that I've come across, I can't even think of a name of the other 10%, but are people who just want to help people at the end of the day, with their particular knowledge base or expertise, or being entertaining, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because you're kind of naming something that maybe sort of these stereotypes, like we know, no, maybe we don't, but a lot of people have heard the stat that, how many young people, like their dream job is not a policeman or a fireman. They want to
Mm-hmm.
be a YouTuber or an Instagram or a TikTok star or whatever. It used to be Instagram. I guess TikTok's the latest thing
TikTok's
they
the
want
new
to be,
thing.
but TikTok's the thing. But yeah, like I guess what makes traditional news is like these extreme idiots
Yes.
who are like, posting videos about things that are like incredibly insensitive or offensive.
Yeah.
I think of a guy who was like glorifying suicide by going to this place where people do that and just like made a joke out of it, and that kind of a thing.
There's always, the small minority amongst the group that kind of make a bad rap for everybody. But I think, just like zooming out a little bit, what I've noticed, and I think the trend that's happening within this space is, if I think of the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. Um, a lot of people consider influencers or creators as being very self-promotive, like, I'm the best,
Mm,
and anything that I post is kind of proving that I'm the best. But I think the
right.
trend that's moving forward is actually more self-distribution. So who is Joanna, and how is she best communicating on Instagram or on YouTube or whatever? So it's less of a promotey thing. And I think the best creators and the best quote unquote influencers out there are looking at these social media platforms or things like YouTube, as more of self distribution platforms, rather than self promotion strategies, or self promotion platforms. So that's really helped me.
Self distribution, you mean literally like we're just trying to distribute the content
Or just,
and not necessarily trying to promote myself? Is that the difference?
yeah. So, Maddie is a really good filmmaker, and he's got a lot of insights on how to color grade and how to make your films look really good, and all of what cameras to use and all of that. And it's less, I think his disposition is less, I'm Maddie and I'm awesome, listen to me because I know all the cameras that you should purchase. It's, hey, I'm going to use YouTube to run through all these different camera specs, because through my expertise, I happen to know what cameras do what better and all that, and I'm going to share that with you. And ultimately, you make the decision at the end of the day. So I think it's less of a promotey look at me, and more of, hey, I'm just going to share this through this particular platform, and if I get followers, great. If not, it's I'm still kind of sharing, and being generous with what I know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Can we talk about that? This idea of like knowledge sharing and being generous? Because I think a lot of people, like the classic thing people feel is like, well, if I give this away for free, what am I going to sell? Like, this is my expertise. Like, why would I put all this out for free on the internet? Like, I want people to pay me for this.
Right. And this is one of the interesting dynamics, is there seems to be, something that happens when you give something away, when you give, let's say, your expertise away for free. I've seen a lot of people who start doing that, and then they're getting invited to conferences to essentially say the same thing that they are saying for free, but just on the stage of that platform. And I think there's a trust level that's there, where if you have a lot of stuff that's, out there on the internet, an event organizer is being like, I've watched this person for however many hours. I trust that, if we bring them to our conference, I essentially know what they're going to say. And I think my audience will really resonate with that. And the audience that's coming to my conference might not be, the type that watches videos on YouTube all the time. So I
Mm.
actually want to introduce this person that I've been listening to for so long to the people that are coming to my particular conference.
Right. Well, and maybe even more than that, like if you are the person who's watched all of Maddie's videos,
Hmm.
even if in person he says the same stuff, I would imagine it's very meaningful to see him in person. Even if the stuff he teaches you in person on a platform is the stuff he probably taught you,
Yeah.
I
What
don't know, in 5 other videos.
And what's interesting about YouTube, I think in particular, compared differentiating it from all the other social media platforms, is you're in a totally different mindset when you watch a YouTube video.
Mm.
You're like, I have 5, 10, 20 minutes to kill. I'm on lunch break. I'm going to watch a YouTube video. Versus on Instagram, you're like, I'm quickly waiting for a bus and, I'm just
Like
going to
mindless
quickly,
scrolling.
yeah, it's more of a mindless scrolling. Whereas I'm going to watch a Maddie video or a YouTuber that I particularly like, and it's almost like catching up with a friend. Like that internal subconscious thing is happening. So when a creator is being a keynote speaker at a conference, there's going to be some people that are going to go just because they're like, oh, I've watched this person and they're kind of my friend. I'm excited to see my friend, and I don't think that's disingenuous. I think it's just an interesting byproduct of having this longer form content and this longer form sharing on a platform like YouTube.
Mhm.
There's an anthropologist, I think his name's like Michael West, Wesch or something like that. He did and more of like an anthropological study on what's happening with YouTube. And if we were face to face right now doing this, it would be weird.
Which we have no excuse not
Yeah.
to be because we are 5 minutes apart.
It would be weird if I was, and this is going to sound creepy, staring at you the way I'm staring at you now. Like
Yeah.
there's no like, I don't need to break eye contact or anything like that. Whereas if we're face to face, I'd be like, I'm staring at Joanna too much. I need to look away.
Yeah.
There's some things that happen. And what this anthropologist said is, because people are essentially watching creators um, and almost like staring at them, there's a lot of these micro things that happen with our facial expressions that make us feel like we're connected with the creator more than we actually are, because we're able to pay attention to those micro
Hmm.
facial things that are happening with them. And because of that, there's some sort of psychological thing that's happening and resonating, and they're resonating with you more than even if you were telling them the exact same information face to face. So it's an interesting dynamic that's happening with creators, and that kind of relational feeling that's happening. And I think during the pandemic, what a lot of people have felt is like, I it's sometimes not the greatest, but I was able to maintain friendships over Zoom during this pandemic, and I think there's a bit of that was happening with that. So the same thing I think is happening with a lot of creators as well.
Yeah, well, and there's that just this what's the anthropological part of it, the psychology of it? I'm not the expert, but we know that when we're in a room with a human on a platform and a screen that's filming that person, we are constantly drawing our eyes to the screen when
Hmm.
we could, depending on how close we are,
Yeah.
we could often like watch the person in person, but we're constantly being drawn to the screen. So there's something so powerful about that screen connection, for better or for worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
that screen connection with these people. So, okay, years ago when this podcast, Where Made Digital, started, if people want to go back and find it in the archives, I interviewed Maddie Hapoya when
Hmm.
he
Oh yeah,
was,
that's right.
I don't know the number, but it would have been maybe, let's call it like 400 or 500,000
Mm.
subs on YouTube. So he was, I mean, that's a lot of people,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's just so beyond that now, a few years later, in terms of the size of his scope and influence. But that's not the story of most YouTubers. And as you are, you're working with Maddie, but you're also you live and breathe this world. So whether you want to use Maddie as the case study
Hmm.
or somebody else, um, you know, what works about that? I don't mean like, Tyler, give us your 5 tips for growing your subscribers. I don't mean that, but just an honest sense of like, what is it about this that it has worked? Or what are you seeing in other trends of accounts that it just seems to work, that it does connect, that the power of talking to somebody through a screen has worked for them? Because like lots of people post videos and there are people like me who have like a few hundred subs, like nobody's watching it. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say nobody. There are people, but not in these kind of scales.
So I'm gonna start at a weird spot, but
Yeah.
I think it helps set the stage. So was it the 1400s when the printing press was invented? And
Yeah, late 1400s, 1500s is like kind of like the internet existed in
mhm,
the 1900s, but the 2000s is
yeah.
when it really like took off.
So
Yeah.
with the printing press, because this is a Christian podcast, like the Bible was able to be printed and more people had access to it and kind of read it for themselves. And, within 100, 200 years, the Reformation happened. And I think, interestingly, I think the printing press had a role to play in that. And so there was a reformation of the one of the biggest institutions of the time in the church because of some new technology that came out, and a lot of people are equating this YouTube podcast audio video revolution that's happening. They're equating that to the printing press. So
Hmm.
I think what's happening uh, is a lot of people are essentially going to an individual or going to a creator and bypassing these institutions to get some of their information around certain things, and institutions are trying to figure out what to do with that, and it's either rendering some institutions
Right.
as fully not necessary. So Maddie's constantly saying on his channel, you don't need to go to film school anymore. Everything you need to know is on YouTube or courses that you can take outside of going. So save $250,000 if you want to, if you're in the States and want to be a filmmaker,
Put that
and
money into your gear.
into your gear. And if that's what
Yeah.
you want to do, you can bypass that whole filmmaking
Hmm.
um, sort of traditional way of doing things, and you can get started right away. And so I think what's happening with a lot of these creators is there's these particular pockets and niches of content that doesn't need an institution to gatekeep the information. And so people are finding those particular things through things like YouTube or podcasts, and digging into that and really expanding their knowledge base and going from there. Now, I'd say that's on the positive side of things. That QAnon and all of those things are kind of the negative examples of that, when you bypass an institution that might be necessary to vet certain things.
Right.
You can go on the crazy side, but I think generally there is a positive association with sometimes bypassing some of these traditional institutions. As an example, there's this one YouTuber that we're helping. He wants to create a feature film. This last year, he's been creating short films, getting brands to sponsor kind of videos around the pre-production, the post-production, behind the scenes, and then the actual video. And he's learned so much there. He's like, I think I'm ready to do a feature film. So he's bypassing the whole traditional producer
Huh.
industry to even finance a feature-length film. And I think that's amazing because sometimes these institutions over time get bloated and bigger than they actually need to be, and end up
Well, and
gatekeeping.
only their own friends get access.
Right.
It's the who.
There.
It seems like who is why your film was
Yeah,
made.
exactly. So I think what's happening is I think some institutions are great. Like I want my doctor to have gone to like the full med school through that whole institution. I don't want them to be a YouTube doctor, that's for sure. Um,
Although we all WebMD our
yeah,
own problems
that's
now.
true.
That's
Um,
real.
but then also I think what's showcasing is a lot of institutions do need reform. They've turned into gatekeepers instead of information dispensary places. And then I think there's other institutions that might not be needed anymore because of this audio video revolution that's happening. So I think all of those three things are true, and I'm not poo-pooing on any institutions. But I think some are still needed. Some might need to be reformed, and others might not be needed. And no, is kind of getting into like organizational behavior, organizational theory. But no institution, no organization can say to itself that it's no longer needed. So it's always going to try and perpetuate itself. So it's up
Huh.
to it's kind of up to the trends, recognizing the trends that are happening to decide whether or not you as an individual needs that institution. And so I think, yeah, I've thought of this more recently, but either individuals break institutions, which I think can be a model for Christ, or institutions break individuals. And I think there's an
Hmm.
interesting dynamic. And I think a lot of these creators on YouTube are actually breaking a lot of the traditional institutions, whether it be filmmaking, like in Maddie's niche, or like we're helping a backpacker who kind of reviews all of backpacking gear and stuff like that, and says this is great, this is not so great, quality's good, quality's bad. Whereas previously people would need to actually go out and buy the thing and regret that purchase, and he's kind of helping people through a decision making process,
Yeah.
instead of spending too much money on something that doesn't live up to the hype. So
Well, it's so true. Like, how many of us, maybe not in a really small purchase, but how many of us have gone online to get a review, and you're trying to find the real reviews,
yeah.
not the sponsored reviews of some product out there that you, especially stuff that you've seen promoted on social media a ton. I know, like the Always pan is something that women get a lot in their promo. It's some sort of cooking pan that's supposed to change your life, but then when you watch the reviews on YouTube,
Mhm.
people are like, it's not that great.
Yep.
There's like lots of pans you could buy for $50 that are just as good.
Mhm.
And I know Maddie's wife has the Always pan, and she's a fantastic chef. So, um, well, I mean, as you're talking about this in relation to what the church thing, and you bring it back to that printing press analogy, it's this sobering thing because you realize, like, when communication means were more distributed in that time in history, it actually, as a result, allowed people to communicate more, think more, share more ideas, and also one of the byproducts of that was like the church split in two,
Mhm.
Catholic, Protestant. For better and for worse, there were things that needed to be shaken up. There was institutional stuff that was really corrupt that they were calling out. But then it's not, but they didn't like fix the problem and then all come back together. It's just like they carried on separate paths from there.
Mhm.
And so I'm seeing that again.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe not just one. I think because now it's not just two split. I think we could go five different ways. Like the church as an
Yeah.
institution, it feels like it's splintering in a few different ways, a few different positions on issues. Um, I mean, you and I have bantered about this stuff so much offline. I'd love to get in your head around um, when you think about not church, the institution, but church, the people, Christians, and you're thinking around things like YouTube. What are some of the things you think you could get excited about, or you think the places it's going to go, um, for like sharing Christian faith with people and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is being able to be in this space. I feel like there's a disproportionate number of Christians that are YouTubers, and I think
Huh.
and I think what's interesting is the industry term for a YouTuber is a creator, and I think that's quite a theological term when you think about it deeply.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm I'm curious, and I'm an Enneagram 5 thinker, so I think a lot of maybe what I say or ponder, I haven't landed on, this is definitively my opinion or anything like that. So
Yeah.
so if I'm heretical, I apologize. But it's more like I'm curious or I'm wondering
Yeah.
these things. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is back in, I think when I was growing up in church, individualism was such a cultural trend, being an individual. And so I think what the church did correctly so is say, hey, you actually need community. and so what we provide as a church is this group that you can join and become part of a community. But what I'm noticing now in culture and society is group identity is might be more popular than individuality, and
Huh.
and I'm curious to see if what the church needs to pivot to is encouraging people to be their God-given unique identity in Christ person self, instead of trying to create a group identity for them under the guise of church culture or under the guise of a discipleship path. Um,
Mm.
and I'm curious as to what that might look like, for a church to say, "Hey, our goal is to make Joanna the new heavens, new earth version of herself here and now, because we have access to who that is through Jesus." So
Mm.
instead of saying, "Hey, we need a kids volunteer on Sunday. Joanna, don't pursue any of your personal exciting things because the church needs a kids volunteer, and we need 8 hours out of your week to go through training and do all that stuff." So I'm curious to see if the church embraces that trend, to really encourage people to be to show the uniqueness of what it looks like to have your identity in Christ. I think Christians should have the healthiest identity, and if you do have a healthy identity, you should be the type of person that is distributing yourself through social media platforms or YouTube or whatever it might be,
Mm.
if that um, is something that you're interested in. So I think, yeah, I don't know if that
Well,
prompts
even
any
like
questions for you.
the like even the kind of the joke of, I mean, there's memes about it and stuff, but we all kind of know if we're in church culture, like even like how someone dresses, you can kind of tell like the kind of church, like, is this person like the Hillsong vibe,
Yeah,
or
the
and the
Hillsong
trends
hat.
change
Yeah.
every the Hillsong hat like 5 years ago, the black bomber leather jacket that
Mm-hmm.
everybody was wearing, 5 and 10 years ago. Like there were been trends over time, but and then like this group over here must be from the Southern Baptists, and this group over here look like the Anglicans. Like there's even like physically like a look
Yeah.
that you have from joining the group, and not all of that is bad, but you're right. Like where is then the sense of like the unique giftings, makeup, spiritual gifts,
Mm-hmm.
passions, etc., that person has? um
So I'll speak personally.
that probably doesn't fit into the plan you had
Right. So
of your kids volunteers.
yeah, I'll speak personally. So
Yeah.
for me, when I was working at the church, I wasn't enjoying my role, but and when I was kind of doing my devotions and things like that in Matthew, what kept jumping out at me was, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Go and find out what this means."
Hmm.
So that kept jumping out at me, and because Romans 12 says, "Offer yourself as a living sacrifice," and I couldn't reconcile those two things. I was like, "Do you want?" And I did some word study, and I think in Greek there that mercy is tied to some sort of passion language. So how I was kind of thinking through it in my mind is that verse essentially says, "I desire passion from you, Tyler, not sacrifice." But in Romans
Right.
12, it said, "Hey, sacrifice, you need to be a sacrifice." So I couldn't reconcile those two things. And then it was probably like a couple months that I was thinking through that. And it finally hit me that in Romans 12, it says, "Offer yourself as a living sacrifice." And I realized I wasn't offering the fullness of who Tyler was as a sacrifice. I was offering the version of myself that I thought the church wanted me to be. And
Hmm.
that, and then I wasn't actually offering myself. I was, offering kind of this empty vessel, which I think in a lot of evangelical church traditions, that's what they want. They kind of want the empty vessel to say, "Oh yeah, we need a church volunteer or something like that." Just and but so I think what I did from that point on was start trying to pay attention to just things that I like and things that I don't like, as a very simple step. And I've found things that I was actually like kind of pressed down passionate about. And I started pursuing those things. So like, just as a quick example, I've done stand-up comedy a few times. And so with all of this thinking, I was thinking through, okay, if if heaven is real, we'll start there. It's going to be physical because that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
And if I
But like
regen,
Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he wasn't a
yeah,
ghost. He was like you could touch him.
yeah,
He was physical.
and the theology goes that well, if we want to know what heaven has looked like, let's look to what the earth was like pre sin, and there was
Mm.
still work involved. There just wasn't the toil associated with that. So we'll be working physically in heaven, but we won't have the kind of the negative associations of work. So it's like, what would Tyler be doing in new heavens, new earth? What will he be doing? And I was thinking, I was like, I think Tyler's kind of funny. He might be entertaining people. So why not try it? If I have access to that Tyler through Jesus because of what he did on the cross, in theory, I think this all follows that I can start accessing that Tyler now, um, through Christ, and that's actually a really great model for Christ. So I'm going to do stand up, and so it was a very like theological decision for me to start pursuing a passion
I love
of
that.
mine, and
A theological decision to do stand-up comedy. It's
yeah,
so good.
and like what's interesting is it was probably one of the funnest experiences that I've ever had. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Might do it again. COVID kind of put an end to that, but there was no intrinsic value to it other than I just enjoyed it. And so I wonder how many people in the church or just in society in general who are trying to do all the right things but are ignoring that thing that's inside them. Um, because whether if you're in the church, you might hear the verses, the heart is wicked beyond all things, who can know it, and you're like, well, I want to do stand-up comedy, that must be a selfish thing.
Right.
So I'm just gonna ignore that. Or I really enjoy watching YouTube videos, I want to do it, but it's too self-promoting, so I'm not gonna do that. So I think you know new school church, after this like maybe mini reformation that's happening because of this audio video revolution, is I think people, Christians, exploring their passions and being in these networks or communities that they're just in because they enjoy it. So I've met so many people through this stand-up comedy space that I've had the ability to um, either directly or indirectly share my history, worked at a church, all this stuff, and I wouldn't have been in that niche or that community otherwise, and I would never have access to them if I was stuck in the what I think the institution of the church would say is the Christian thing to do, or preach from the outside of they're all sinners and going to hell. I'm I'm in and I had this realization with I was in a stand-up comedy class, and Emmanuel is the name of Christ, God with us, and I realized that like any other context that I was with other people who weren't Christians, I was like, oh, God has me here for a reason or something like that. But it was the first time I was just sitting there, I was like, no, I'm with these people, like I'm here because we're all trying to pursue this thing, and I'm not this
You're
churchy
not on a
person.
secret you're not on a
Yeah, I'm
secret
not on some
mission.
secret mission. I'm just
Yeah.
being
Huh.
myself. And I think
Right.
that was a really, you know, incarnate like feeling that I had that was I still remember today. I still remember that sitting in that class, be like, no, I'm with these people. Like I'm not on some secret holy mission. I'm just being
Yeah.
my authentic self, and I happen to be with these people.
Well, and it's interesting, as you say that, like, because I've noticed this sort of anecdotally as well, that there are a lot of YouTubers that have large followings that are Christian. So again, not out of like a secret mission, but it is like a place that people are finding connection, that they're
Hmm.
finding like a place to live out, as you say, like their passion, the thing they love to do most and talk about it, the thing that makes them most come
Yeah.
alive. And when people, I guess, and maybe say more about this, when people see you excited and alive about something, they want to follow and learn
Yeah.
more. They want to Yeah, like what do you think that is? Like when you think about, yeah, again, like kind of going back to the original question then around like what's making some of these accounts work on YouTube.
I, I
Um,
I think passion
yeah,
is one of those things that's happening in the zeitgeist right now. Is what yeah what's that quote? Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is somebody who's come alive. I I
yeah,
think that's very true. So, if I would say I'm more alive now than I was being heavily involved in the church, just full stop. And I've
yeah.
been able to have conversations with people saying like, how did you, take that risk of leaving a stable job? And like, you seem to be, you're doing stand-up comedy. Like, what is going on with you? And and so I feel that that's much more um, indicative of what it means to be a Christian than, you know, what the
Mm,
institution says is a Christian, where let's go to church on Sundays, let's volunteer, let's cover all those things. And so I don't know, I'm rambling, and I think I forgot your original question already. But I think what I'm saying is like there's this passion thing that I think people are noticing because
like it's attractive. The passion is
Mhm.
attractive.
And I think
Yeah.
there's a point of relatability in that, like, hey, even you don't have to have Christian history or even a Christian background to be like, I was told I go to school, I get a good job, I get married, I buy a house, but I'm still not super happy, but I've done all the right things. Like, I can't, it's kind of their version of, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, or offer yourself as, I've done all the right things, but I'm still not feeling the way I was told that I would be feeling by all this. So I think encouraging people, or these people seeing somebody passionate about something and pursuing something a bit unorthodox is starting to trigger something within them to be like, oh man, like there's something about this, whether I'm not passionate about cameras, but I'm watching this guy because he's passionate about cameras. What am I passionate about? And so I think there might be something that's stirring up in people as they watch some of these creators to be like, I need to find something, whether that's golf, whether that's baking cookies, whether that's, you
Mm.
know, making candles, um,
Yeah.
pottery,
Because you're
whatever it
right.
might
I
be.
mean, when you're talking about Maddie as the example here, as the illustration of, million and whatever subscribers, I can't imagine, because there's people like me who follow him. We're not filmmakers, but we're connecting to his storytelling and we're
Hmm.
connecting to his passion for what he does, even though if he reviews a camera lens, he's gonna lose me.
Yeah.
What I mean is lose, like, I don't mean lose me as a subscriber. I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
the information is very technical and kind of beyond my understanding of cameras. I don't know. I got the iPhone and I press play and it works,
Yeah.
but yeah. Well, and so maybe that leads me then to digging into, you have a clothing company now.
Yeah. So,
How did, so the pastor turned YouTube manager turned clothing brand creator? I mean, maybe connect the dots for us. What
mhm.
Tell us about this? Tell us about the brand and help us connect the dots of what we can learn from what you're up to.
Yeah. Going back to kind of the mentoring YouTubers, and I think YouTube is, and this whole space is one giant experiment in identity. And so what once I think Maddie is this is I'm a very small percentage owner. Maddie's kind of the face of it. But um, what's this clothing line is an expression essentially of Maddie and his values. And so
Mm,
I think what's happening with YouTube, and this is where like kind of the institution individual thing comes out as well, is what typically happens is I want to be seen a certain way, so I'm going to buy clothes that kind of represent that of me. And I think Maddie's at a particular size where instead of partnering with somebody, we have a network size that we're probably somebody is interested in fashion and has the whole supply chain. So let's see if there's any opportunity here.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's essentially just another expression of who Maddie is. Um,
Hmm.
Thinking through that self distribution mindset.
Right.
So
And
just
maybe say more about the clothes, because
yeah,
you're talking
it's
like,
it
how can clothes represent you? Like,
yeah.
some people are not going to get, you're losing
I
them
know.
already. Like, what do you
It's
mean?
it's
Like,
been
it's
a
a
horrible
t-shirt.
explanation. So Maddie's Finnish Scandinavian, so it's Scandinavian inspired streetwear. It's very very plain, very minimal, like very similar to Maddie. But there's always it's very high quality though, which is very similar to Maddie's foot videos and
Oh
all that.
yeah, I've touched those t-shirts.
Yeah,
They're
they're
surprisingly nice.
and there's
They're
all of
high
these
quality fabrics,
there's all,
Tyler.
all of these small little details that when you look closely, you're like, oh, the designer has actually paid a ton of attention to this particular garment.
Hmm.
And so I think that's also similar to what Maddie's done on YouTube and the films that he's made and stuff like that. The closer you look, for color grade, the transitions, the storytelling are all these fine tuned details that keep people's attention
Hmm.
over time. And so I think those values, those principles also have translated into now a clothing line. And this is the kind of the unique expression side of things where he's has always been interested in fashion and in clothing. So this was an organic thing. And by proxy and by me, being the entrepreneurial person I am, has helped with that. So as part of that, I now somehow am part owner of a Scandinavian inspired streetwear brand. Um,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
it just means you don't really have to go shopping for clothes anymore. I see what you were up to.
yeah, exactly. I feel much cooler now.
Well, and at the same time as all this is happening, you're managing stuff. You've got this dabble in the comedy world. You've got the clothing company. Tell us a little bit about your own process of joining YouTube, because you're managing all these other YouTubers. You're seeing what they have done. So has that felt intimidating to you to start your own channel when, like, you're working with some of this top YouTube talent? How are you approaching that yourself?
Yeah, again, this is one giant experiment in identity. Um, so I think what I've come to like work through is, how do I explain this? So let's say I've created a video and it's the perfect expression of who Tyler is as best as it can be through a digital video format. And let's say all 7 billion people on Earth see it. And there's a number of people that will say, "Oh yeah, I really like what this guy's saying," and there's going to be a whole ton of people who like, "Nah, I don't like what this guy's saying, and I'm not going to." So let's say that out of 7 billion people in the world see this video, and 10,000 people are like, "Yes, I like what this guy is saying, and I'm going to kind of subscribe to him and watch his
Yeah.
stuff." And that's my authentic person. I might be able to perform at a level that might get me 1 million subscribers, but it won't be my authentic self. So I might be able to do
Right.
things.
Oh,
I might be
interesting.
able to copy bits of Maddie, copy bits of other YouTubers, and kind of create this character that isn't actually my true self. And I might be able to get 1 million subscribers, and that might be, at least on the outside, that feels like the right goal when you're working in this space. Is I want to get the maximum number of subscribers, because that's just what you do. And I'm going to
Well, that's
change
how you make money,
that's how
and
I'm going to change who I
yeah.
am to appeal to the mass amount of people, or the people that I want to try and appeal to the most. But I think what happens is the gap between my authentic self, let's say 10,000 or 10,000 subscribers, and the performance version of myself that could get 1 million subscribers. If I'm performing anything above 10,000 subscribers, that's just going to be so anxiety inducing and
Hmm.
I'm going to be stressed out, burnt out over time, and it's not going to be good. So my my goal is to try and express myself as authentically as possible, and it's almost an experiment. Like, like I really think this video topic is interesting. Oh, it only got 200 views. Like it,
Yeah.
it's less of like an ego hit or that I didn't perform well or anything like that. It's like it's more of like a science experiment every single time that I try a video. Is like, I'm interested in this. Is anyone else? Um, and so I think that that's been a mindset. So I don't feel intimidated when I'm, rubbing shoulders with people who have hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers, and I have, 700 or something like that with like 100 views on my videos, because I'm I'm more just, wanting to share what I know, and I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is I didn't understand, or I didn't fully realize the networking um, opportunities that even have come up from the few videos that I've posted, and the some of the business people that I've been able to connect with, um,
Hmm.
who who are more on the business entrepreneurial side of things, maybe watch my video. They represent other YouTube creators or something like that. We're able to connect and have a good conversation, and maybe do something down the road. Had I not put that content out, I would have not made that content, or sorry, I would have not made that contact. And so there's value in it outside even just the numerical, follower count
Yeah.
or views that I'm noticing is happening that I didn't foresee. And I guess
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
I think that's so interesting what you're saying. Just the idea of like it's like a your resume or your CV is sort of being put out. How you think, how you approach things
yeah,
is being put out in the world. It's less about the views because
yeah,
this isn't how you make a living off YouTube.
yeah,
You mean you make a living in other ways. So you're like not tied to trying to chase the numbers. You're trying to put yourself out there in a way that connects with other people.
yeah. And I think
Um,
the final piece to that is, I'm, like I mentioned, an Enneagram 5 thinker, and when an Enneagram 5 is healthy, they act more like an 8, which is a challenger, which is sharing what they know or sharing their
hmm,
opinion and all of that. So I have a few mentors in my own life that are encouraging me to not just stay in my head, but to, share that. And it might be helpful
yeah,
for other people. So for me, as somebody who, when I did the Enneagram thing, 8 was actually, I think, my lowest ranked thing, but a healthy 5 acts like an 8. So it's been part of my journey with them who are mentoring me to bring that 8 up in me. And so even just hitting upload after sharing some thoughts, I think I'm considering that a win. If people watch it,
yeah,
great. If not, it's a win in and of itself. And ironically, I think people who have that attitude when they're producing content, hey, I just want to share this, I've been thinking about it, I'm going to share it, there there's some sort of sixth sense authenticity thing that sometimes people feel and connect with, and that might be the thing that goes viral or whatever. But when that turns into a strategy, it automatically ruins it. So it's kind of this fine
yeah.
balance of you know being comfortable in who you are. And I'm coming back to this identity thing, this whole conversation, but yeah, this is kind of who I am, what I'm thinking about. Hopefully you like it. If not, just me sharing it has kind of been an internal win for myself. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and everything I'm hearing you say, kind of back to the earlier conversation around the institutional stuff. Why institutions of any kind, whether it's Procter and Gamble trying to sell you cereal or it's a church trying to
Mm-hmm.
get you to, join their kids ministry programs, why they struggle, why the institution struggles. It's hard to do all these things you were saying to do with this sort of personal sense of passion, identity. There's not an agenda that you're bringing at this point around trying to get. I mean, obviously, you want people to
Mm-hmm.
watch it, but you're not. The goal isn't how can I make a brand deal right now. You're just putting the content out.
Yeah. And I think what
Yeah,
happens with brands and institutions, organizations, it it's harder for people to connect with them online than it is an individual. Um, so, and actually, I think the church. Anytime I hear the church talk about social media, they're having a negative. They're talking about celebrity pastor in such like a negative sense, but I think it's
Hmm.
just a byproduct of human nature. So I think we're shaming something. Like I'm gonna follow the lead pastor of a church more than I'm gonna follow the actual church, because it's more human nature for me to connect with a human than it is a brand. And I think what happens is anytime I see a post from a brand, subconsciously or maybe consciously, something happens like this brand wants something from me. Um, Whereas with a person, there's a chance that they're just sharing something and being generous.
To connect.
And I think
Yeah.
there, with a brand, there's always going to be that disconnect. But with a person, at least there's a chance that they're being authentic, and I'm going to, connect. I might be able to feel a sense of connection with them. So I think celebrity pastor gets a bit of a bad rap, because I think it's just more just human
Hmm.
nature. Like I think somebody who's interested in church might not, identify as a churchgoer or Christian, but they're interested in somebody is going to follow a pastor first before they probably follow that particular church brand.
Hmm.
So I can't remember why I brought that up, but I say that to just, yeah, help people
Yeah,
understand
we
that,
just,
like,
yeah.
it's the people connect with people, and
Yeah. And people over institution is what you just keep saying in tons of different ways in this whole
mhm,
conversation. And uprooting systems like, hey, we can start a clothing company as some YouTubers because we have access to these systems
yeah,
and can have a product that links with our, our personal
yeah,
brand and sort of how we present ourselves in the world. I think that's really cool. Hey, I've got some rapid fire, you could say, some quick questions for you as we
alrighty,
close. And then I'm going to ask, then we'll want to know, like, how do people find you on the internet?
sure.
But first question, what's the best spot that you've traveled that other people should go to they may not have gone to before?
This might be recency bias, but I just got back from Norway, and specifically Lofoten. It's about an hour and a half flight north of Oslo, and it is absolutely stunning. And
Huh.
like, so just Google
And it's
Lofoten. It
north.
is
It's like
it
way
is
north.
north, but we were there kind of in the winter, but go a bit in the summer, because apparently the sun doesn't hit, so you can go out on like a hike at like 8 p.m. and it'll be sunny. And if
Wow.
you're into photography and all of that, you get this nice golden hour for most of the day. So everything
Wow.
looks very epic. You'll get a ton of likes, because that's what everyone's known. I just ruined everything that I shared about being an individual right there.
Hey, what's a book that has changed how you think about something?
Um, Book that has changed how I think about something. Um, Donald Miller's coming to my mind. I consume a lot of Donald Miller books. I think his uh, I think I've resonated with his journey of. I think he's got a new book out called something about a hero. And I apologize to Donald Miller if he ever hears this. But he's got a book essentially about playing the hero in your own story. His story brand framework is also helpful, I think, on a personal level for people as well. So I think Donald Miller's story brand, this hero on a mission, is the book. It just came to my mind.
Oh yeah,
It
there it is.
is a good
Um,
one.
hey, what's a movie, whether from childhood or recently, a movie that has made you cry?
Oh, Homeward Bound.
Ugh,
That'll make you cry all the
when the
time.
dog comes, it's so good.
But
uh,
there's a show on Amazon Prime called As We See It. It's with one of my favorite comedians right now, Rick Glassman. But it's following three autistic people in their early mid 20s, and I was just like bawling through that whole. It's a TV show. It's a whole series,
wow.
but the whole cast, or the main characters are all autistic in real life as well. So
Oh,
it's an
interesting.
interesting dynamic. But that was a tearjerker.
Your go-to, you're at the ice cream shop. There's 50 flavors. What's your go-to?
Mint chocolate chip,
Ooh.
always a good
Do you
good one.
upgrade to the waffle cone or you
Yes,
stick with the cone they give?
waffle cone, or just if they have got like a waffle bowl, I think that's a good one too.
Oh, the bowl. You're
Yeah.
going all out. Okay. And the last question is simply where do you want to send people to find you on the internet? To you, you've talked about your YouTube, or is there a website, your Instagram? Where do you want to send people? We'll link it in the show notes.
Just go to my Instagram, Tyler Richard Wells, at Tyler Richard Wells, and you can probably get to everything else, Tyler Richard Wells, from there.
Awesome. Tyler Richard Wells, thank you so much
Yeah,
for hanging out with us today. I'm hearing my dog
I
is
heard that
under the
too.
desk, and I don't know if you can hear her through the mic, but she's expiring,
Yeah,
which means this conversation is coming to an
it's
end.
dinner time for Pearl.
She has let us know that we've talked long enough. It's dinner time for the dog. Thank you so much, Tyler. Watch this space, everybody. Follow Tyler's YouTube journey. Track with the kind of mentorship. Also like obviously he's connected to these other creators, so just following him is fun to see sort of behind the scenes on some of these other creators you may know that he's working with. Thanks, Ty.
Cool. Thanks for having me. This was fun.